Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the choices we're forced to make in order to survive, in order to withstand a job, try to manage and create a career against our own wishes, against our own benefits and desires. I'm going to start by sharing from my personal experience because I feel like even in this day and age with scientific and empirical logical evidence, there's still nothing like um, our individual experiences, our lived histories, and um, subjective or testimonial type evidence. Um, so, um, I was in this same, let's say, six-figure job because I try not to put that company on blast because I'm sure that other people had better experiences in that company. So this is again a subjective, individual experience based on the time that I was there at that company, which was about 2021 to 2022. And it also was affected by the people I was with, the team that was there when I was there. So who knows how the team has shaped differently now or how things might have changed. But anyways, so I was in this marketing role, and it was a team of, I think, about 10, 15 of us, give or take. Some people were full-time. I think there was some interns. So anyways, I was in this full-time role as a marketing coordinator or communication specialist. They're kind of similar or used interchangeably in the field, depending on our focus. And so right before, or I should say right after COVID, some companies in the United States, and I'm sure all over the world, but really started to figure out their new normal, the new hybrid or the new remote work procedures. What was it going to be like now working? Were they had to make huge pivots, huge changes well, I guess a little bit before and then during, of course, COVID. Because of the nature of what was happening, it all had to be remote as much as it could have been, ideally. There were some companies that I know of. There was a company that I was in, that I was laid off in, actually, that really resisted and didn't want to do hybrid for the longest time and was in denial of what was happening around the world and just, current events. So when I was looking for new roles and this job had come up, it had come up as a hybrid role. And I was fine with that because I did want to be at least one day in the office. I liked the idea of getting out of my house and slowly but surely rebuilding those social skills. So the role of social communications coordinator was hybrid when I was brought on. But slowly, the corporate policy of this company started changing. Every so months, it was increasing more the amount of time we would have to be in the office. So when I started, it was once a week. After I think about 3 months, it was twice a week. So for me, that was okay still. But, with understanding of the commute and all of that, meal prepping and just everything that goes into working on site. And then finally, I think it would be 6 months it became 3 months, or I'm sorry, 3 times into the office. And this was a huge pushback. A lot of people didn't like it. I, for one, didn't like it. But they tried to accommodate, I think. They created spaces within the different buildings. It was a campus. So if you imagine one of these tech companies, I didn't work for Google, but if you imagine Google campus, I think based in San Francisco, they have multiple buildings. It's a whole like university, and each building has a certain focus area of speciality, and so that was similar to the environment that I was in. It was a campus. They had about 4 or 5 buildings, a couple bridges that connected the buildings, and so within each building they would make silent rooms, private kind of like phone booths. So they tried to, with their, real estate, with the space that they had, trying to give some sort of a middle ground to those of us who liked working individually or needed quiet time, or if anything, just as a kind of throwing a bone, so to speak, that they realized the inconvenience of going into the office. And hopefully that would ease the burden, for those of us who grew up with Disney and saw Mary Poppins, and she's kind of this nanny to these kids in UK or London, I don't know where specifically in England. And she says that it's easy to take the medicine with a spoonful of sugar. That's a whole song. But that's kind of the analogy, is that they tried to make things easier for us without knowing. And this is, I think, the huge fallacy. This is the lie about working in corporate environments, that the overarching, the hierarchy, the people who are at the top, the C-level, which is usually the executive, so they call it C-level for those of you who maybe are not in the States or haven't worked with those type of leadership roles. The C-level is the chief executive officer, so C, the CEO, the COO, chief, not cheap, I don't know, maybe they are cheap, chief operating officer, CFO, chief financial officer, and all of these. So they all start somehow with the letter C. And so from that level, let's say 50,000 feet high, they're at the peak of this hierarchy of the mountain. They really don't know. They're really not aware as to how their policies are going to be implemented, if at all, at the lower levels, at the mid-management level, at the director level. They don't know how, let's say, the rain will fall. So in my team that I was in, the marketing team, I should say, the manager at the time, she was completely remote. She was the one who was able to move cross country, so from the DC metropolitan area to California, and we didn't know if she went into the office or not. It appeared so. At least once a week, I think she did, or maybe twice. But it's hard to know because she's not there physically as we all are there 3 times in the office. And so slowly, from her standpoint, things started to, from her level, I should say, of management, things started to get quite tense, I would say micromanagement level, because she would say things in email. She would send us emails to the effect of, we're not allowed to use these other spaces that have been provided for us on campus in these buildings, in order to take private calls, in order to work in private, because we all worked in cubicles. She was denying us the right, the privilege that she herself has, that she herself may use or may have used, I don't know, on the grounds that we are being watched, that there is some other leader or executive or team that has commented to her unbeknownst to us, so we don't know. Nothing could be corroborated, there's no, let's say, evidence to prove that what she's saying is that we're not behaving, we're not in our cubicles. And so there's this fear. She created this tension, this negative energy, that on top of the fact that people did not want to, myself included, did not want to be in the office 3 times a week. On top of that, not allowing for people to use the full space, the full range access that they are being given, she's denying that. On top of that, and this is where making those choices, going back to, how I introduced this episode, it gets really tricky. We have to sometimes just endure for the sake of the money, for the sake of the stability, sometimes, not always. For me, what happened was my car at the time was starting to break down. It was a car I had had for maybe 5 years. It was completely paid off. I was very proud because for those of us in the United States who the path is mainly to go to college and get a degree, and that degree is a debt, may or may not be viewed as an investment. But that is kind of the main route in order for us to even have a chance to get to double figures or 6 figures, I should say, or whatever amount of money we choose to have, we really want in our lives. So I was very proud of the fact that I had paid off my student debt during COVID and that I had paid off my car debt, which was another $20,000. So in total, I had paid about $60,000 to $70,000 in the span of 8 years or something like that, very aggressively. And so now this car was breaking down, and mind you, this is the car that I have to use 3 times a week, not including groceries and just other, regular life habits, life things, getting gas, just anything, shopping. So there was some horrific moments where the car would literally break down in the middle on the way to work. And so it was so much anxiety. The engine under the hood would start to smoke, and I would have to just barely make it to work with like a little bit of smoke, fog in my eyesight right in front of my in front of that main window, that main I can't think of the word right now in the car, but like where the windshield wipers are, that main front window. I would have to drive kind of blindly for a few minutes. And so my intent was to, of course, get another car, but I didn't want to feel the pressure of having to get a car that I wasn't ready to get in debt for, or to see if I could save up a good amount and put a down payment. So this is where having good management is ideal. Working for a company, having a team that really does support the personal aspect of ourselves, not just the professional and the output and what we can produce for them, but really valuing us as people. Because again, a job and a career is not all that we are or all that we do. And if you want to hear more about all of this, there's another episode with a special guest, Helena, and she talks more in depth about accessibility and management and things like that. So anyways, I was really getting to this point of stress because I never knew if I could make it to work with this vehicle, but I hadn't saved enough. for a down payment as much as I wanted. So I would have had to inevitably get into a car loan. And so I wanted to find a way to speak with my manager about what are my options. Could I work from home temporarily, like within a time period until I got my new car? And then I would be more than, happy or I would be willing to comply, of course, with the 3 days in office policy. And it came to a point where I had the conversation with my manager, and she effectively said, you either comply now or you quit. You don't have this job. And in another episode, I think I talk about when this same manager, on my last day of work before a 2-week vacation, sat me down and kind of really blindsided me, threatened with a performance review plan. So anyways, this is the same manager, if you heard that episode. And I was really taken aback. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not that I'm quitting my job or that I'm not performing as an employee. It's just that this temporary situation is happening, that I just need some time to find a good car that fits with my budget, with my lifestyle. Also, the car market was not at a great point at that time, so I would have had a tremendous percentage for the interest rate. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to stay in this job or find a new car and then decide whether to continue in that job. Or better said, I had, let's say, 3 options. I could stay and really let my car break down, let it just, sit on the side of the road. 2, I could stay in the job and find a new car, regardless of if I was ready for the amount of debt or if I knew even what type of car I wanted, but I just complied. Or the 3rd option, I guess, is that I quit the job and with no plan B, and then decide and figure out my car and my job options. So I decided to stay in the job, and I gave myself until that Christmas season, so just the end of December. So it was, I think, a month turnaround time, that I just kind of bit the bullet, as they say, and I just got a new car. So I knew what type of car I wanted, but decided to get in debt. Had no choice, because these are the choices that are not ours. These are choices that are made for us, or that we're forced to endure, and that not necessarily are for our benefit. Because if my manager had worked with me and had been a bit more empathetic, more compassionate, had been able to really see that, okay, I really care about this employee as an employee, as someone who is producing good work, but also I care that they're able to produce good work by not having this anxiety, by not having stress, and by being able to commute to work safely. And so let me provide the means, let me find the support that they need in order to create that environment, even if it's just temporarily. Because she could have advocated for me and said, okay, as her manager, I am putting this temporary lift of that corporate policy of 3 times in the office, and I will work with her to make sure that she is working from home and accomplishing her tasks, and that having a deadline by a certain time, she needs to have a new mode of transportation in order to come to work, because if not, then, whatever the case may be, no longer able to work with us or work on this team or the company, whatever it is. But because that didn't happen, I really felt so forced, stuck between a rock and a hard place, that if I am not allowed, if I'm not given the time needed to make an astute decision, make a decision that's not just going to affect the short term, but is going to affect the long term. And I do mean both the job and the car. Because the car here in the United States, it's depending on what state you're in also, the access to public transportation can be pretty bad. So the car is so needed that we can't travel without one. But then also, if the job is treating us like shit and isn't giving us the real standard of living, the quality of balance, of harmony in our personal and professional lives, then we need to weigh, well, which one is going to help me more, the car or the job? Which one is going to really be able to support me? Because if I didn't have the car, how was I going to get to the job? So it's like a chicken and egg scenario here. So this is one example that I wanted to talk about in decisions that we're forced to make. It feels like we have choices sometimes, and sometimes we really don't. Like, this is not a choice. I mean, technically, right? I had the choice of just leaving the job, but I had no plan B. I didn't have enough savings. I wasn't ready. My mentality was not to change jobs. I was satisfied with where I was. So being forced to do something against my will, being threatened to not have a job because of what's happening in my personal life, the lack of transportation, the complications with my vehicle, that's really insufferable. Like, that's really messed up. That there are companies out there, there are managers out there that are really so, I don't even know if toxic is the word, but that they are so blinded and so focused on what we are producing for them, what is it that they're getting out of us, that everything else just doesn't matter. And so I say this example because I'm sure that there are instances in your life, in your career, that you can bring to mind that sometimes the jobs that we're in because we have to, because this is something that it's a financial situation, because it's something that we're just trying to get experience or exposure in something. There's an underlying motive that's not personal, or I should say that's not intrinsic to us. Like, for me, something that motivates me is my creativity. But this job had no creativity. I really was just in this job in order to save money. It was a very financial decision. And then when the car situation happened, even more so, it continued to be a financially motivated decision, because I knew that I wasn't getting anything else out of it. And as long as I was getting my money and being able to save as I wanted to, then it was fine. But these are the things that sometimes we do have to think about. When is the time, or when are the situations where we have just endured in a job, in a relationship, in something in our lives that was really for the short term? It was something that was meant to be only like a band-aid, just to help temporarily. And if you're still, so this is, I guess, part 2 of that question, is that if you're still in that situation, relationship or job, that you took initially as a temporary solution, or as just to solve a certain problem, a certain reach a certain goal, whether it's financial or whatever it is, if you're still in that, ask yourself, have you met your goal? Are you ready to let it go, essentially? Because for me, I didn't last long after that car situation. I was able to get the car, and then I think it was 3 months later, sometime in the spring, that I left. And I quit, as I said before, during that time when I was going to take 2-week vacation, and she set in a random meeting and just kind of ganged up on me and blindsided me with that performance thing. So these are important things to know about, to think about, because sometimes we stay in jobs and careers because we think we have to. And the question really is, do you have to? What is it that you have to meet? What is the minimum, whether it's the minimum salary or benefits or certain experiences and tasks that you're looking for? What is the minimum? And can you find that elsewhere without being drained and, without these things without certain things, qualities that maybe a certain manager or industry or environment had? Because I really feel and believe that jobs, just like relationships, this is a two-way street. So if at any point in time you feel taken advantage of, you feel that you're being forced into things, and it's not mutually beneficial and it's becoming more harmful, don't make the decision to settle. Perhaps temporarily you are making the decision to endure because it's a temporary thing. For me, it lasted 3 months, that period. From when I decided to get the car to 3 months when I left. During those 3 months, I was already thinking, okay, this place is not for me. I did what I had to do. I bit the bullet. I had to get a car because I already needed a car. And even though I wasn't able to save as much as I wanted to, but I was able to refinance the car, lower the interest. So things did work out with time. But within that 3-month period, I was already mentally looking at other jobs, interviewing, and just moving forward, recognizing that was a short-term endurance, a short-term sacrifice that I had to make in order for me to move on to my next step. So if you are in those situations right now, if you're in a job like that, know that time, that will pass, that time will let it heal and move on. But you also have to be willing and able to take those steps, to recognize it for what it is, and be able to self-advocate, be able to make that list, make that distinction of what you do want in your life, what the new job, what the new career path will look for you, so that you're then able to start to call that in, bring it in, and apply or network or whatever other steps you need to take. So let this story or tale not be a cautionary tale, but really be one of sometimes we have to make difficult choices or sacrifices in order to surpass and go over whatever obstacle we're trying to overcome the obstacles. But understand that is not the norm, or that's not what we're trying to sustain. Sometimes we make tough choices in the short term that will and should benefit us for the long term. We just have to keep that long term in mind. And if any job is keeping you in that kind of fear and anxious energy and mentality, that's a red flag. And you should start to go deep inside, figure out what it is that you need, that you want, that will be of best service to you. And whether you are financially motivated or you're more purpose driven, start with asking yourself those questions of your skills and your desires and the lifestyle, ultimately, always the lifestyle that you're looking to build. So I hope this was helpful. I'll see you all, or I'll talk to you all in the next one. Oh, and P.S. I should say, I do have an ebook called Removing Toxic Relationships. I have it out on my website as well as on my Instagram link. And I offer that because as we talked about the manager relationship and even relationship with that corporate environment and even with myself, these are some tools, tips that I used in my career, but also in my personal life to identify toxic relationships, to identify toxic environments and situations, and how to start to build my confidence, how to heal those wounds and be able to move forward, be able to really cultivate better, stronger, healthier relationships, first and foremost with myself, but then with others at work and outside of work. So if you're interested in this information, in the guide, please check out the show notes for my website link. It'll be there, or on Instagram in my bio link. All right. Thank you all. Till next time.